Welcome everybody. I'm very excited to have you here and we're all very excited to talk to you. As you're all aware, this is the Graduate Certificate in Transdisciplinary Learning. So we'd like to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, upon whose ancestral lands the UTS City Campus now stands. We would like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, acknowledging them as the traditional custodians of knowledge for this land. So, to start our exploration of the new Grad Cert in Transdisciplinary Learning, I'll pass you over to the course director, Dr. Tanya Golger.
Thank you, Adrian. Hello, everyone. This evening, you'll get to meet a few members of our core teaching team. Throughout the program, there'll also be various guest contributors from across our university, some of our national and international collaborators, as well as external partners from industry, organisations and communities who'll be working with us in the different subjects. We're very excited about the work ahead as we continue to reimagine education as transdisciplinary. In the program, we offer two streams. We tailor the standard stream for individuals. There is an information pack on our website which outlines the study details for individuals, including when the different subjects are offered, how to obtain professional recognition for those teachers wanting to meet the Australian professional standards while studying this program, and also how to apply. We tailor the enterprise stream for organisations and teams. Working with an organisation and knowing their strategic priorities, we curate a professional learning program for their people to address specific educational needs and priorities.
Some of the key features of this TD learning program include flexible online learning. We have a focus on addressing complex problems or opportunities and also learning collectively. We work towards understanding and working with transdisciplinary practices, TD practices for short. We work with complexity, with futures and ecosystems. We also have a focus on breadth, exploring lots of ideas from diverse disciplines and practices. And we welcome diversity and we also build towards professional networks. So the program consists of 6 3-credit point subjects running over 5 weeks, and we have one 6-credit point subject which runs over 10 weeks. Subjects can be taken in any order, other than you need to complete a requisite subject before doing the Living Learning Lab, which is the 6-credit point subject. We also recommend you do the TD Learning for Change as your first subject. All the Grad Cert subjects are also offered as equivalent micro-credentials. There are 3 core subjects and 3 studio subjects. Their practice-based focus means all participants bring their knowledge, experiences and curiosity to these subjects and take what they learn and generate in their work with us to trial in their professional practice and their communities, to continue with the conversations and designing opportunities where you're putting TD learning into action in your contexts. In the core subjects, we introduce you to TD learning concepts and to frameworks, theories, methods, and case studies. And we couple that with putting into practice complex problem solving, inquiry approaches, and imaginative ethical leadership. In the studio subjects, you are immersed in complex professional learning and educational challenges that actually cut across sectors and stakeholders. You work together with external partners and academic researchers to generate new insights and initiatives for action, while also considering the relevance of those developments to your own professional contexts and networks. So learning in the studio environment is inquiry-driven, it's creative, and it's rigorous. So back in late 2012, we started to work on our first undergrad transdisciplinary program, the BCII. Over the years, we've used TD approaches to develop these other undergraduate and postgraduate offerings. Working closely with industry stakeholders, there were many questions and strategic priorities driving the design and development of those programs. For example, we were using the clock of the long now metaphor, which some of you might be aware of. And we were asking questions such as, how might we conceive of education fit not only for the 21st century, but that would somehow reverberate into the next? So taking that long view, what capabilities ought we support our students to develop? What is it about our graduates that will make them highly valued within society, both now and into the future? Here are some of the ways these programs are distinctive. The BCII and Diploma in Innovation, for example, are combined with professional degrees in other faculties and disciplines, bringing that diversity of disciplinary perspectives into the classroom. In the development of these programs, we were actually putting TEDi learning practices into action, working with ideas about complexity, about futures, innovation ecosystems, and TEDi methods. And we were doing that with industry partners and with communities to tackle complex applied problems, and including our students and academic teachers in that work. As I mentioned, there are 3 core subjects, which you can see on the wall with the red background, and the studio subjects have the grey background, and the lab is in black. Each core subject is coupled with a studio subject in some way, which we'll talk about. In these 2 subjects, the focus is on you as a transdisciplinary learner and inquirer. TEDi Learning for Change introduces you to transdisciplinary practices. We trial different methods, techniques, perspectives, and approaches from a range of different fields, disciplines, and stakeholders to reframe a significant challenge worth pursuing. We also explore the value of collective learning using a particular creative method. In this transformational learning studio, you work as a team to tackle a current complex challenge that cuts across sectors and professions. And we usually choose a challenge that is timely and that's really pressing. So by using creative provocations, we playfully explore how transformations become possible and also visible, and we track how they might occur. We use inquiry-inspired approaches where questions can be more transforming than answers. In these studios, we work with many different stakeholders. Adrian will now talk a little bit about what that looks like in operation in his transdisciplinary learning practice.
I work in the spaces where students, industry professionals, and academics work and learn together. This might include things like internships or industry projects and challenges. And throughout these types of experiences, there are very different stakeholders with very different needs. For example, a student might participate in work integrated learning because they want to determine their fit with a potential career or industry. A host organization might require a short-term flexible source of labor, and academics might want students to be able to connect theory with practice to really enhance the overall learning experience. So given these very different, I think often conflicting stakeholder aims, it's important to find ways of enabling discussion and reflexivity. If all stakeholders understand each other, they can co-create new aims and new experiences to suit the needs of everyone involved. And in my experience, transdisciplinary methods and mindsets can enhance the quality of the required stakeholder interactions. Now, last year, I actually helped to design and deliver a new subject called the Professional Immersive Experience, or PIEX for short. This in itself was in response to a complex challenge out of COVID, and it involved undergraduate students, a top-tier professional services consultancy, a government-funded regional development body, 4 secondary partner organizations across things like technology and change management, and 48 individual partners contributing as mentors, workshop leaders, and panelists. Now, in total, there were 60 undergraduate students, 89 industry professionals, 12 university professionals, and 6 academics, all working within the boundaries of a single subject. Now, it would have been an impossible task for us to design a learning experience to align with the needs of everyone involved. So my approach was to use transdisciplinary methods and create spaces and opportunities for everyone involved to shape that experience for themselves. And in this way, all stakeholders were able to participate as equal partners and create a learning experience which aligned with their personal needs and the needs of their peers and industry partners.
Okay, the next two subjects. So in these two subjects, the focus really is on designing TD learning environments. So in the core subject, we engage you in design provocations from different disciplines and professions. And we try and do that in a really creative and unexpected way. You explore and use various creative methods, futuring approaches and inquiry methods as you prototype TD learning experiences. So we try and use lots of different prototyping kind of methods to really get you out of your comfort zone and to think in quite different ways. It's also an opportunity for you to design a small-scale, safe-to-fail experiment for testing in your professional practice. And we really do mean it as a small scale, something that you can actually implement in your environment the next day or the next week. With the studio, in this studio subject, we ask this question: what if learning environments, initiatives, or organisations were more like regenerative ecosystems? And we use the concept of regeneration, which is popping up in a whole lot of professions and disciplines at the moment as an extension and a different way of thinking about sustainability. And we use that concept of regeneration as a metaphor for reimagining how we might design future-oriented TD learning experiences. So what we do, we'll be working with external partners, and together we explore the regenerative principles which we distill from those current practices out there in the real world. And we think about how such principles might shape learning, innovation, and transformative pathways to ethical futures. Indeed, future thinking runs as a thread through the grad cert subjects. And we deal with the different methods and the different approaches from different perspectives in the different subjects in different ways. So lots of, diversity in how we look at these methods and these kind of approaches. So Claire will now share with you some of her creative practices on futures.
So you might be wondering why we say futures instead of the future, because that's probably a more correct way of saying it. But there's actually a really important reason why we do that, which is that what we're trying to get people, if you think about it, the future actually doesn't exist. The future is actually a story that we tell, and it's perhaps one of the most important stories that we tell, because our expectations of what the future will be determine a lot of our actions in the present. So in futures thinking, we really are going to encourage you to think of this idea of seeing alternative futures. And we'll teach you how to kind of expand your thinking so you're able to kind of explore these multiple future scenarios. And if you think about it, there's probably never been a more important time to do this. We're facing this increasing degree of uncertainty about climate change and global politics and impacts of technology such as automation and artificial intelligence. So being able to imagine different future possibilities and being able to plan for them and build resilience into your systems is really, really important. Now, I just wanted to share a little kind of thing with you guys that I think is kind of interesting, especially with the framing of this idea of regenerative futures. So in futures thinking, we tend to think about the future in kind of four ways. We kind of have four dominant narratives, if you like, about the future. And these are continual growth, which is really the one that kind of suggests things will be business as usual. The economy will keep growing, GDP will keep growing, everything will keep getting better. We have the story of constraint, so where we kind of imagine governments coming in and putting regulations in to kind of control growth or control trouble that might be occurring. We have collapse, which is obviously one that is kind of apocalyptic, that things will kind of all collapse. And we have this one about transformation. And I think that it's really the last one that is really powerful and that we're going to really explore in this Regenerative Futures Lab unit. But like, how do we do that? How do we kind of think about the future in these different ways? Well, in this unit, we're going to look at lots of different things. We will kind of explore the myths that we kind of hold when we think about the future and kind of unpick some of those business as usual myths. We'll explore what we mean by regenerative futures, and we'll look at megatrends and some weak signals that are emerging. And lastly, we'll explore how we create our own visions for the future and how we can share these visions with people and also enact them. So in the past, I've used these processes with lots of students, and in a really exciting way, they have contributed to real world projects like the City of Sydney's 2050 vision, which they've just released, the Atlassian Tech Precinct that they're kind of planning for, and even a program that brought in Celestino and CSIRO, who are doing a big development around Badgerys Creek. And like, say, for example, with the City of Sydney one, the students thought about what kind of futures we wanted and how we could make them, and then presented them to the City of Sydney. And these were actually put into the 2050 plan. So they literally helped create a plan for the future. And I think that's pretty cool. Lastly, on this slide, I've put up an image of a project called Museum of Futures. This is an award-winning project created in partnership with City of Sydney that really brings together communities, organisations and decision makers to not just imagine transformative futures, but also to create objects out of them that they can then share with other people. So lots of really fun stuff ahead.
So in these last two subjects, or the next two subjects, we shift the focus to really collective learning from a systems kind of perspective. So just talking about that a little bit more, we use methods and concepts to think differently about and map learning systems. And you've already been talking about stakeholders and the many people that are involved in these kinds of projects. So you can already see that that there are complex kind of interactions, and looking at what learning looks like in those kind of learning systems is something that we kind of start exploring. And the reason we kind of start doing that as we consider initiatives and potential educational and societal impact, what we really want to do is identify where do we make leverages in those systems? What do we choose to do and why? And in that process, we also examine measures of impact and quality. Then in this studio, we not only design programs for entrepreneurial learning and experimenting, but we also consider how we might bring that entrepreneurial thinking to our own educational and professional learning work. So how might we become system thinkers when putting into practice new initiatives? So systems thinking also runs as a thread through the grad cert subjects. I'm going to hand over to Sean now, who will share with you some of the projects he's been involved in that are drawn on taking system perspectives and actually leveraging opportunities for change.
I hope you can all hear me. I live near a train line. Talk about complex systems. Trains, when they go past with all the people on them, use up my bandwidth on my hotspotting phone. So there's a sign of emergence for you. But you know, systems, I don't need to tell you about them. We all live in them. We're all part of systems, and we will notice happenings happening all the time in systems. So really, I suppose where I'm coming from systems is that, let me first of all tell you about my slide here. It's at the center is an image of a person. I'm from a health background. I'm from an educationalist as well. And I'm just a person that exists in systems where I like to value the person in these systems, the whole system and the whole person. That is, I like bringing a well-being focus in what I do with systems thinking and working with people on projects on how you also value the people and their knowledge, not as disciplinary knowledge, but also from their life context as well. The things with systems that they're influences. And these influences all the time through information. And we can see systems and complexity as an ecosystem of communication. So in this case, then, this image is quite interesting because it emerged from a project that I was involved with last year called the Constellation Project. And it's dealing with something we call a problem. It wasn't a problem, and it's called homelessness, which shouldn't be a problem, and it shouldn't be something we need to be working on. But it was a project that emerged from a whole group of different stakeholders who realised, and these were people from right across different sectors, from philanthropic, from community, from social, from business, who realised they all had an interest in homelessness, on how to actually fix the problem. And they realised that from a systems perspective, that all vying effectively and working in that same space, but vying for that same pot of money. And so they said, this is silly. You know, we're all replicating systems. We're all bashing our heads against ourselves for this same sort of opportunity to help our own respective communities. And that gave birth to something called the Constellation Project. And the Constellation Project has now come together as a collection of transsectional people and interests that include policy, that include government, that include businesses, educators, academics, as well as practitioners and people in community who are knowledge holders in their own right in their own communities, on how to address and how to actually work with meeting this challenge of building 100,000 homes within 10 years. So coming back to this image, it's interesting because this image was done by someone who was homeless at the time. And it was done by a friend of mine who happens to be neurodiverse and was homeless. And this is the type of person who would benefit from something like this project coming to fruition. So really then, I suppose what I'm trying to say to you is that you know, the thing about the systems is we have what is called systems holdback. And by seeing systems, you start to see the paradoxes. And those paradoxes give insight on how to challenge systems, but also work with systems, but also how to address things like double binds. For example, the fact that we getting cars to drive around because the public transport is not effective enough for where we live. At the same time, knowing by driving around in our cars, we're producing pollution that effectively will lead to our extinction. They're double binds and they emerge from systems. And, you know, this language too of emergence and complexity, it's such a flat language these days because everyone uses those terms. But the thing about systems is they give us perspective on how to see different, those challenges and possibilities to transform them into something different. And certainly with education. So I suppose that's my bit of a spiel about complexity and certainly about systems, but mostly it's about honouring self as well and honouring you as someone complex in your own systems. So really then what I particularly want to talk about, or a question I'm going to pose for you all, is something about the future, not the future, but something you've noticed, something you've seen about your own systems in most recently. And I'm going to talk about COVID-19. And specifically with COVID-19, it became most apparent the knock-on effects of different parts of our system interacting and causing further consequences to happen. So in terms of certainly the last 12 months that we've all experienced, I'm going to pose a very simple question, and that is, what was revealed for you? And I'll just type that into chat as well. Another way of looking at it too is what was noticed. And it's through those noticings that we see those revelations and we start to see those connections with our communications ecology. And that informs how we see the world. But more interesting, it adds further perspective on us to see differently and change how we engage with the world as well. Intergenerational learning, I love it, Jeff. Absolutely agree. And that's something that we saw happening most especially over the last 12 months, this idea on how younger generations can inform older generations can inform younger generations, but how generations together also learn together in complex systems. Adapting and thriving is really interesting, and adapting and thriving, that pursuit towards excellence in life, how to live the good life as such, but also how to build that reflexivity. So when systems change and the the variables that gave rise to that system change, it changes in the challenges we have as well. So often when we design so-called solutions to problems, no such thing as solving a problem. That's the problem, is the problem solving. We need to meet the challenge. And so we have reflexivity. So how do you design a learning environment that's also reflexive to change in systems, which is a great question as well. And the fact that we really are more capable, and more specifically, I love that, MJ, the fact that, your complex self and all of you, not just your disciplinary knowledge, but your knowledge on how you engage with your family, your knowledge and experience of growing up, your place in society, but where you live geographically, all those are learnings that should and can inform that complex learning space that we want to transform for the future. So I'm just watching my time because I can talk too much in these spaces once I get on a roll. But particularly, I do have one other thing I'd like to ask you, and that is about your journey in transdisciplinary learning. And more specifically, what captured your curiosity to imagine differently approach to learning and education? And I'll just put that as a complex question. No, it's not. It's complicated. But I'll put that one in the chat as well. But in particular, I want to know what captured your interest to actually start considering an approach that was different from what you've been doing before, or an approach that continued to enrich a journey that you'd already started. So for myself, I've been an educator for 25 years. And so saying that too, I say an educator, but I'm also a learner in that space and learning all the time. And I found for myself that it's great to talk about systems objectively. It's great to see complexity objectively. But the fact is, we're dealing with people, we're dealing with relationships, and that often we found those contexts, those learning contexts, fail to honour the whole person and that learning they brought in. Jeff, I love your commentary as well as everyone's here as well who's not saying things but should be saying things, because this is a wonderful space for us to learn together, even from this presentation today. Local context is really, really important, because a so-called challenge often is influenced by contextual factors within specific environments. And if you design something to suit those challenges you're facing in that environment and move to somewhere else, it's out of context, it's no longer fit for purpose. So, complexities and systems, we exist in it, we are part of it.
So the final subject that we're going to be talking about tonight in any detail is this 6 credit point lab. And this is the one that runs over 10 weeks, and it actually connects you to a live research project which explores educational and professional learning challenges that we as researchers and practitioners from different sectors are actually tackling together. And we're doing that through taking a transdisciplinary learning approach. So it's a live research project that we bring into this space to interact with you. In terms of the case that I'm going to be talking about, which is really short. So in the subject teams that I've been working with to develop this program, we're starting to kind of elicit and pull out and shape the kinds of questions we're really interested in inquiring about that are related to what we're exploring in these grad cert subjects with you. So here, as Adrian has talked about, we too are learners, we're researchers, we're designers, and we're teachers in how we collaborate with you as participants in the program. So in these kind of really collective learning situations, as you can imagine, ethical considerations of how we learn and inquire together, as in all transdisciplinary initiatives, whether research or education, really need to be examined sensitively and respectfully. So as we said earlier, and as we've been talking about, these subjects and experiences and projects that we introduce as we're working with industry partners are really inquiry driven. They're really asking and exploring things that are pressing to understand and to know. So we place ourselves into spaces of unknowns where we actually don't know something. So we bring our best thinking and we bring people who need to be working with us in the space as Adrian was talking about, the stakeholders, but also people with expertise to help us work together to, I guess, try to better understand the challenge itself. And we bring, obviously, as we've been talking about, different methods and different kind of approaches to that task. And we don't just leave it at that. We actually work up, I guess, initiatives or small-scale probes or experiments, and we trial things, because it's through the trialing and whether it's successful or unsuccessful, and that's why we call them safe to fail, we learn and we do that together. There is another subject which is part of the enterprise stream within the grad cert. And if you want to know more about it, there is that information pack for organisations that actually talks about and situates that subject within the grad cert program.
Back in 2016, I entered a keynote presentation with the following words, which I wanted to share with you also. So here we are at the cusp of UTS's transdisciplinary learning futures. From my perspective, as an educational design researcher, these UTS developments provide an unprecedented opportunity and responsibility to reimagine education fit for a 21st century world, a complex challenge in itself. And as we tackle that challenge at a pace befitting the current urgency and demand to equip our graduates for their long now, it is these words of Liz Coleman that come to mind. Being overwhelmed is the first step if you are serious about trying to get at things that really matter on a scale that makes a difference. So what do you do when you feel overwhelmed? Well, you have two things. You have a mind and you have other people. Start with those and change the world. Now, in 2021, we are further along in that journey, and with the launch of the new Graduate Certificate in Transdisciplinary Learning, we hope you join us, and we look forward to our continuing work together to reimagine education as transdisciplinary to tackle the complex challenges of our time. If you have any questions or want to explore the possibilities, do reach out and contact me via email. On our website, you'll find further information. We welcome you to come back and explore that website as we add new items, events and stories. Thank you also for your wonderful contributions to our interactive activities this evening and for your great questions. Please join us at our next session in mid-June when we address a set of top 10 TD Learning questions, as well as taking a look at the program and TD Learning micro-credentials from quite a different perspective than we did tonight. We look forward to continuing conversations.